Torah Studies class. So this week's Torah portion is Beshalach, and you can find it in the Chumash. Who's got the opening? 422, 422, and 423. Okay, perfect. I'm already ahead a little bit to where I want to pick it up, but 422, 423 is where it begins. So the Jews, breaking news, the Jews have been freed from Egypt. The Exodus, please take them fast, the Exodus has happened. The Jews are free. And at this point, all that stands between them and Mount Sinai is a sea. No big deal, right? Well, about that. So, of course, we have the story of the chase, where the Egyptians chase the Jewish people, and they pin them against the sea, and the sea splits, and the miracle ensues, the Egyptians drown, and all is well. Well, guess what? Not all is super hunky-dory yet, because we're dealing with traveling Jews. And if you've ever dealt with traveling Jews, you know that nothing is simple. Am I wrong here? I am not wrong here. I am absolutely not wrong here. Because, it's everything. Is there enough food? We're tired. We're hot. What are we doing today? We're going in circles. Who's leading this trip anyway? I don't like the hotel. The restaurant's no good. Yeah, you call this 4-star, blah, blah, blah. The whole deal, right? So Jews are, interesting. So here's the bottom line. The bottom line is, immediately after this great salvation and this incredible miracle, so literally, you know what? Let's look at this inside. Look at 441. Okay? Or 439 even. 439 is the song. You see that stagger text. Thank you. Is that us? We'll find it. That is the song at the sea. In other words, the sea just split. And the great miracle has happened. Is it?
It's a little person.
Wow. Baruch Hashem. Yeah, I think it's Ray and Lillian. Amazing.
The miracle has happened.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Oh, the miracle has happened on every level, right? Miracle has happened. And so they sing the song. They sing a song of thanks to Hashem. And then we have the next one. You know what, Matt? Can you swing right around and then we'll put them right over here? Yeah, thank you. And then the next thing that happens is on 441. 441. Oh, welcome. Avenu shalom aleichem. Avenu shalom aleichem. Avenu shalom aleichem. Avenu shalom, shalom, shalom aleichem. Lillian, great to see you. Ray, great to see you. Come, you have a place of honor right over here. Wow. Come on in. Wherever you want to sit. Even here if you want. It's good.
Where do you want to sit, Ray? Oh, we'll sit up there. You'll be able to see. Yes, so I can see and hear.
Yeah, we'll give you the best seats in the house. We got the best seats right here. Great to see you. You can sit here, wherever you want to sit, wherever's comfortable. Sit right here.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah.
I'll close this right behind.
Take your time, settle in. We're just talking about miracles and splitting the sea.
You're looking at one right now.
Yes, I know. Yes. I know. We're very, very grateful that you're here.
I am very, very, very blessed to be here with all of you. So, Lillian just completed 15 rounds of radiation and 21 chemo. Wow. And then we go back and go to chemo part 2.
And you should have good health and only blessings. And we should have many opportunities to study Torah together.
Yes.
I'm grateful that you're here.
All right.
Ray, thank you. All right, so we're talking about the miracle of the splitting of the sea, and the Jews escape with their lives. The Egyptians are drowned. And the next thing you know, the Jewish people are singing the praises of Almighty God. And the men sing with Moses, and the women sing with Miriam. And immediately what happens next is, and you can't make this up, on page 441, here, I'll get you the page 441 in Torah, what happens immediately after the great miracle? Everyone's on a high, it's all great. The next thing you know is, the water's no good, and the Jews are like, there's no water to drink. Jews are complaining, right? First thing we have after the great miracle is, you call this water? Unbelievable. Who made this water? Take it back. It's cold. Right? Yeah. So that's it. They're complaining already about the food, about the water. The next thing is, a few pages later, they're complaining again. They're complaining about no food. They have no food. So first about the water, and the water gets sweetened. And now there's no food. So Hashem says, you know what, I'm going to give you meat and the manna from heaven. So, which is not a bad deal, right? Not a bad deal, because it says that the manna would taste like whatever they wanted it to taste like. So if they wanted, for example, I don't know, fried chicken, done. If they wanted it to taste like the Impossible Burger that tastes like it tastes like, could also do that somehow in a magical twist of miracle food. So this was the ultimate food. Some people call it spam. No, is spam the food that tastes like anything or something? I don't know. No. I don't know. Whatever it is. So the manna was this really great food that could taste like anything. Now, the manna, of course, was miracle food that was unprecedented. Didn't happen before. Didn't happen after. Only throughout the duration of the Jews' time in the desert. But there are some laws and some Jewish practices that we do till this day that we derive from the manna. And I'll tell you what I'm talking about. Is everybody familiar with the Friday night Shabbat meal? Yeah? Shabbos dinner? Shabbat dinner? Yeah? Good. How many more meals do we have on Shabbat? We have one Friday night, one Saturday, and Saturday afternoon toward evening. So we have an Eve Friday night meal, right? We have a Shabbat lunch. Yeah, it depends on how early you daven, right? So there are some communities. We start here 9:30 and we end 12-ish. I love this clock because you can never really tell what time it is. So we'll always call it 12, right? Because I mean, it doesn't matter what time it is. It always it's vaguely something. This time is moving. We don't know what it is, but time is there. It's moving somehow. It's somewhere. So look, you have our services end about 12:15, and then we go downstairs, and lunch begins about 12:30. We start eating. But some synagogues, some communities, they start praying at 8 o'clock? And if you knock out the davening, if you don't have a long sermon, you could be done by 10:30, and your Shabbos meal is kind of like breakfast or brunch, which is not a bad deal either, because you do your thing, you eat your food, you have a nice shlaf, you have a nice Shabbos rest, which is again not a bad deal. But so that's the second meal. So first meal is Friday night, second meal is Shabbat, late morning, early afternoon, whatever. And the third meal is called, well, the way it's called, if you want to really the third meal, Shalosh Su'udot, right? Shalosh Sudis, or whatever, however it's pronounced quickly. So it's the third meal, and it's eaten between Mincha and Ma'ariv, between the afternoon, the Shabbat afternoon service, and the evening service, upon which pretty much Shabbat ends. In that kind of twilight time, if you will, is when we have the third meal of Shabbat. So here's the question. Here's the $1 million question. How do we know that we're supposed to have 3 meals on Shabbat? Where does this come from? I'll tell you where it comes from. It comes from the story of the manna. So let's recap the story of the manna. So the manna would fall every morning on the doorsteps of, well, that's assuming they had homes with doors. Okay, on the tent, near the tent entrance of the Jewish people, right? It was accessible. Actually, the Talmud says that it depended on how righteous the individual was. If they were at tzaddik, if they were righteous, so the manna pretty much came to the entrance of their tent. If they were, not a perfect tzaddik, but pretty much okay, then it was a little bit of a walk. And if they were a rasha and not such a good person, then they had to schlep down to the corner store, to the A&P. I'm kidding. I don't know what A&P is, but I feel like it's the Northeast. Yeah, it is the Northeast, or maybe even down here back in the day. All right, so they had to go a little bit further if they were of maybe less spiritual stature, whatever. But the bottom line is that this was a miracle. They didn't have to work for the food. They didn't have to harvest. They didn't have to plant. They didn't have to plow. They didn't have to sow. None of these things. The food came to them. There was a layer of dew on the bottom, the manna on top of that, and then a layer of dew on top, and it was a sandwich, a dew sandwich. Now, if they were on a mountain, we would call it Mountain Dew, but that's a different story. So this was I'm here all week. So yes, we just did that. So what you have is, you have a manna delivery every morning. And every morning it was enough food per person for that one day. And the way our sages describe it, it was enough food for 2 meals. Because guess what? Back in the day, many cultures had a custom of having how many meals per day? 2. In America, we have 3 meals a day. Because we can, because we're Americans. Why not? But in many cultures, they only had 2. Intermittent fasting, exactly. So it's all the rage. So they would have 2 meals a day, and they ate the manna. You could bake it, you could fry it, you could saute it, you could grill it, you could roast it, you could do whatever you wanted with it. It was the most what's the word I'm looking for? Huh? Versatile, yeah. It was a very versatile food. You could do whatever you want with it. And it came out great. It tasted whatever you wanted. It was this, that, the other. It's great. Okay. Fine. However, there was one exception. Oh, and by the way, Moses tells the people, because Hashem told Moses, don't keep any for tomorrow. What you get today, eat today. You're going to go to sleep at night and not have any food in your cupboard or pantry, or no food. And how anxiety inducing might that be, to go to sleep at night and not have any food in the house, right? Especially if you're Jewish, right? No food, what are we going to do? Nonetheless, this was an act of faith. Going to sleep every night to trust that God will provide the next morning. There were those who tested this and who tried to save some, and what happened by the next morning? It got wormy. It got spoiled. It wasn't good. And Moshe said, I told you so. You're not supposed to keep it for the next day. There was one exception. Friday. Friday morning rolls around, and everyone's collecting their man. It's fantastic. It's great. And they're noticing it feels a little heavier than usual. And they say to Moses, my high, what's going on? Moses says, you're getting a double portion today. You're getting a portion for Friday, and you're getting a portion also for Shabbat. Because on Shabbat, there's no gathering. Because gathering and then cooking it and baking it and roasting it and grilling it and all that stuff, that would constitute work that we don't want to do on Shabbat. Shabbat is a day dedicated to Hashem. We don't want to do that type of work. The menial labors of collecting, gathering, preparing, cooking, whatever. So collect it today, the double portion. Hashem sent a double portion. You'll cook for Friday. You'll cook for Shabbat. And that's it. And by the way, save it, some of it, half of it, for tomorrow, and it won't go spoiled. It won't go bad from Friday night to Saturday, the stuff that fell Friday morning. And that's how it happened. So here's what I want to do. I know the Chumashim are open, but actually, maybe we'll do it from the Chumash. It's always nicer to do it in the Chumash. Let's see if I can find it. Let's see.
25.
Is it verse 25? Let's see.
16.
Yes. Look at this. 449. A few more pages. 449. Here we go. Matt, please get us started. 1622, where it says double portion of manna for Shabbos. Right there. No, not from verse 25. From verse 22 with a big O. Right there.
Okay. On Friday they gathered what they later discovered to be a double portion of bread, 2 omers for each person. The heads of the community came and reported it to Moshe, because Moshe had not yet informed them about the precepts of Shabbat, which God commanded him earlier to give over. He said to them, "This is what God said. Tomorrow is a rest day, the holy Shabbat to God. Bake whatever you wish to bake today, and cook whatever you wish to cook today. Whatever is left over, put aside for storage until morning." They put it away until the morning as Moshe had commanded, and it did not become foul-smelling or worm-infested. Moshe said, "Eat it today, for today is a Shabbat to God." Today you will not find it in the field.
Okay, that's perfect. So let's stop right there. So Moshe says, he says the next day on Shabbat, eat it today, for today is a Sabbath, a Shabbat to God. Today you will not find it in the field. So eat it. You're not going to find it anymore outside. No reason to go outside and look. Okay, this happened on Shabbat. So our sages, ever attentive to the nuance of psukim, of scripture, they notice something very interesting with this verse. This last verse that we just read, that Matt just read, verse 25. And that is that there is a word that is repeated multiple times, and it didn't have to be repeated. Which word is it? Today. Hayom. 3 times the verse says today. Today. Marsha. Right? 3 times it says today. It says Hayom. Ichlu Hayom. Eat it today. Ki Shabbos Hayom Lashem, because it's a Sabbath. Today is a Sabbath to God. Hayom lo sinsu b'sada. You will not find it today in the field. 3 times it says the word today. And our sages tell us beautifully that what is the implication of the triplicate of the 3 times that it says the word today. So let's read this inside. Steve, please read. Now we're in the Torah studies booklets. In these booklets, do we have an extra one? Yeah, we have one extra one. Let's pass it down. We got it. Perfect. Open up, please, to page 47, which is really just going to be the second page right here. There you go. Yep, right there. This is for you. Text 2. Steve, please read text number 2 from the Talmud.
How many meals should one eat on the Sabbath? 3, as the verse states. And Moses said, eat it today, because today is Sabbath unto God. Today you will not find it in the fields. The word today appears 3 times in the verse.
The Talmud says, the Torah says 3 times Hayom. It says about the manna 3 times the word today on Shabbat, which tells us it's a hint. It's not a clear commandment. It's a hint that how many Shabbat meals should one have on Shabbat? 3. Remember, they got a double portion of manna. And every time they got a portion, any single portion, it lasted that day until the next morning. So there was a morning meal and an evening meal. So the one that fell on Friday, they were going to eat Friday morning and Friday evening. But they got a second portion. The question is the second portion. How many meals? Right? What are we doing with the second portion? So the Torah says that Moses indicates or intimates, Moses hints with saying Hayom 3 times that here's what should happen. There should be a meal Friday night, which is good for the Friday manna. There should be a meal Shabbat morning and Shabbat late afternoon as well. 3 meals on Shabbat, Hayom from the manna. However, there is one more meal associated with Shabbat. Although we talk about typically 3 meals of Shabbat, there is a 4th meal that takes place. Tell me, when does the 4th meal take place? After Shabbat. After Shabbat. And what is it called? Malava Malka. What does it mean? What do those words mean in Hebrew? What do they mean in English?
Accompanying of the queen.
The accompanying or the escorting of the Shabbat queen. Okay. Take a look at this. Take a look at the Talmud text 3a. Bert, please read this 3a, page 48. The Talmud Tractate Shabbat says the following about meal number 4.
Rabbi
Chanina
said one should always set the table for a full meal on the night following the Shabbat, even if he will only eat a measure of an olive.
In other words, even if you're not so hungry. Why are you not hungry Saturday night? Because you just had 3 meals in the span of like less than 24 hours, right? Nonetheless, set the table with a lavish meal. Eat a little bit, but set the table. You're supposed to have another meal Saturday night. Malava Malka, the Saturday night meal. So now it's 4 meals. Again, 3 on Shabbat, 1 after Shabbat, after Havdalah, but now you have 4 meals associated with that time. Friday night, Shabbat morning or early afternoon, Shabbat late afternoon, and Saturday night. Those are the 4 meals. Now, what is the purpose of this meal? Here we go. Bert, please continue, page 48. Rashi explains.
Setting the table on the night following the Sabbath is also a form of honoring the Sabbath. It is similar to accompanying the king as he departs the city.
There you go. So he says that the meal that we have Saturday night is also a form of honoring Shabbat, even though Shabbat is closed out already. It's still a form of honoring Shabbat. Why? Because it's like accompanying the king as he departs the city. The king or the queen, Malava Malka really means queen. Nonetheless, whatever it is, the bottom line is it's accompanying royalty out, and that's the deal. Now, again, let's focus on the question of, well, what are we supposed to eat? How much are we supposed to eat? So what we saw from the Talmud is, while the meal should be set, you're not obligated to have a full meal like you are on Shabbat, where you're supposed to have maybe some wine and maybe some bread and maybe some other stuff, like a full meal. Here you could have just a little bit of the food. However, the Talmud also says regarding this meal, this fourth meal, that there are some foods that are extra special to have. So let's take a look at the menu for Saturday night as recounted in the ancient Talmudic text. David, please read this, page 49.
Drinking hot water after the Shabbat departs is medicinal. Eating warm bread after the Shabbat departs is medicinal. Rabbi Abba would have a 3-year-old calf prepared for him after the Shabbat, though he would eat only one kidney. When his son, Abini, grew older, he asked, "Why do you waste a calf if we can save a kidney from the Friday night dinner instead?" The next week, they served a kidney from the Friday night dinner, and the lion devoured the calf.
Well, there you go. The best laid plans and devoured by a lion. Unbelievable. What they failed to mention is that they were doing this in a game reserve, and that's why the lions were around. No, all joking aside. So here's the deal. What do we have here? We have this notion. What does it mean that drinking hot water after Shabbat departs is medicinal? What is this? We're getting ancient therapeutic healing potions. Like what are we doing here? What it means is that the Saturday night meal is so special. It's actually healing. It's for a gesund. It's for good health. So have a hot tea. I think I will. L'chaim. Hey, it's Saturday night somewhere, or maybe not. Yeah, hot water after Shabbat is medicinal. It's good. It's good for the soul. It's good for the body. Warm bread, again, it's healthy. It's healing. The deeper implication is that the Saturday night meal is beneficial for us as well. And even if we're only going to eat a part of the calf, the kidney. People eat the kidneys of animals. Is that a thing?
Some people do.
Some people do, but
I
I
don't.
wouldn't.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
He went straight for the kidney.
Not for me.
All right. I wasn't sure even as I asked it. Is it only me or is it because I've been to butchers. I've never been offered like the kidney.
It's a generation ago.
It must be last generation.
It's British.
Oh, is it British?
Kidney pie.
Kidney pie.
Ah, well there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So obviously what this means is that in other places, in other eras, it was a normal thing, right? Like we might have liver, like chopped liver. They had kidney. Well, I mean, I don't know. It's all weird or not weird depending on how you look at it, right? It's all cultural. So vegan exactly. Faux chopped liver.
Impossible kidney.
The impossible kidney. All right. So what's the point? The point is that there's a mitzvah. It's nice. It's good, it's healing, it's therapeutic to have the Saturday night meal, have a nice meal set, have a full, even if you're only going to eat a little bit, you have a full calf there, and then there's always leftover Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, you can always eat it the rest of the week. It's not like being wasted. But the point is, if you're trying to skimp on the Saturday night meal and only use leftovers from Friday night and not have a dedicated thing, lions could end up getting involved, and who needs that? Who really needs lions now involved? Like, I was trying to be frugal and be practical, and the next thing you know, a lion. We don't need that. Okay.
This is after Havdalah.
Yes. Which, by the way, that point is going to lead us to a question, which I'll ask in a moment. Take a look at how it's described in one of the versions of the Code of Jewish Law. This is text 4b. Please continue, text 4b. David?
In our day, when we eat the third meal later in the day and are unable to eat after the Shabbat, we may fulfill the obligation by eating fruit.
So he's saying again on a practical level, if you're eating the third Shabbat meal so close to the end of Shabbat that to turn around and sit down for another meal, I don't know, a half an hour later is a little bit too difficult no matter how good the food is. So fine, have a little fruit. The bottom line is we're supposed to have something. Saturday night, there's a custom also, beautiful custom. You put candles. Yeah, you set out, you set the table, you bring out food, however much you're going to eat, but make it look nice. There's a custom to tell stories of tzaddikim. In Hasidic communities, there's a custom of telling stories of the Baal Shem Tov. You know what they say about the stories of the Baal Shem Tov? A lot of miracle stories. They say, if you believe all of the stories of the Baal Shem Tov, that they happened literally as told, then you're a fool. But if you don't believe that they could have happened, then you're a heretic. So that's the double-edged sword when it comes to stories. That's a good one, right? Stories of the Baal Shem Tov. What's the point? The point is Saturday night meal, it's something special. I called the email this week. I hope you guys are getting the emails. If not, let me know after the class and we'll try to fix that. I entitled the email Saturday Night Live. I know that means something else, on NBC, but for us it means we're there and we're eating to our spiritual and physical health, and it's a good thing. We don't have to eat a lot, but eat something. Okay, now, a few questions that I want to ask. We're going to ask two primary questions, one related directly to the topic and the other one that's kind of sort of related to the topic, as you'll see. So the first question is, if the meal, as Ray pointed out, if this meal is happening after Havdalah, which is after the ceremony in which we close out the Sabbath, right? So what that means is the Shabbat queen, or king, whatever it is, the Shabbat royalty has already left, and then like a half an hour later we're sitting down to a meal, guess what? We missed the boat, right? Mm-hmm. If you want to escort the king Shabbat royalty out, do something with Havdalah. In other words, it sounds nice if you don't look at the details, but once you look at the details, you realize like the timeline is a little bit off. Like, you have a very special guest in your home, you bid them adieu and farewell, and then once they're gone, a half an hour later, you sit down for a meal. That's really not called escorting them out with fanfare and with a nice a nice way of taking leave of them. That's literally getting rid of them and then sitting down for a meal. That's not the same thing. So what are we doing? It seems like the timing is off, and if we're escorting them, then maybe we should be eating the meal kind of outside. We're eating the meal inside our home after Havdalah. Again, if you look at it very loosey-goosey and kind of general, yeah, that's kind of what we're doing. But if you look at it very specifically, it seems like it's not really lining up to what the objective is.
So it seems like I came across where you do Havdalah one of two ways. If you do it as part of the meal, you do Havdalah sitting as part of the meal. If it's not going to be part of the meal, you do it standing, and you may have a meal later on.
Right.
So
maybe that's, you could say, but I think a lot of people do the Havdalah standing up, and they do it as a standalone thing, and they have a meal later. And if that's the case, what's with the meal? Like, what's the purpose of that meal later? Shabbat's already gone. So the queen's already out. Maybe that's where that minhag comes from, to do it like in one fell swoop. But according to the other custom, which is pretty prevalent, right? I think probably the majority of people do Havdalah as a standalone thing and have the meal only later. What are we really doing? So that's one question. We have a good answer for this, by the way. Otherwise, we would just kind of like fudge it and say, yeah, it's close enough, whatever, it's good. Saturday night, we're doing our thing. But we have a really good angle on this, so that's what we're kind of diving into the nitty-gritty. The second question we're going to ask, which is a very general question, which is going to have almost an obvious answer, but it's also about leading to an insight, is why do we have a 7-day week? What's the meaning of the 7-day week? Right? That seems kind of arbitrary. If you think about it, days make sense because there is a 24-hour sunrise, sunset. There is some sort of 24-hour cycle that happens. Months make sense, especially if you look at it from the lunar perspective. The lunar cycle, if you will, waxing and waning of the moon is about 29 and a half days. So we have, 29 and a half days. So we have, that's the notion of a month. A year makes sense, right? That's the solar cycle, 365 days, and a quarter is the seasonal cycle, the solar cycle. But what's the deal with weeks? Weeks don't meet, huh?
Creation story.
Hold on. Outside of the religious component, it doesn't actually make sense to have a segment called weeks, because all of the other segments in time, pretty much, the primary segments of day, month, and year line up with some sort of planetary, astronomical phenomenon. It ties into something that's happening objectively out there. Whereas when it comes to weeks, what's the 7 days? Like, what is that? Now, you might say, well, we were being pragmatic because we had the division of a day. Well, that's a short unit. And then we had a month, and we needed something in between to kind of... Yeah, we need weekends, right, number one. How you can watch football on Sundays if you don't even have that? Like, what does that mean even? So maybe we wanted a shorter division of 29 and a half days, 30 days or so. So we had weeks, but then why 4 weeks, maybe 3 weeks? So maybe every week should be 10 days. It's not a bad idea. You know what? Let's do that.
Make it so.
Yeah. I think we'll just issue an edict and make it happen. I need a gavel. Right, so why not have 10-day weeks, 3 of them, boom, we're done.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's an obvious answer, right? The obvious answer is because we have the spiritual piece of it, of Hashem creating the world in 7 days, and that's how societies in time have followed suit. But again, just understand that there's really no astronomical sense to a week. A week doesn't actually indicate any sort of cyclical change objectively that we're marking with time. It's kind of just arbitrary from a scientific perspective. You with me? There were attempts, by the way, by some ancient civilizations, even after, I believe, the French Revolution, they tried to do this, maybe a 10-day week. The communists in 1929 tried to establish maybe a 5-day work week or a 6-day work week, but none of these really took off. 7 days really is only for one reason and one reason only, and that comes from Torah, which talks about God creating the world in 7 days. 6 days of creation and a 7th day of rest, which now leads us to the question of what's the deal with that cycle? Why does God rest on the 7th day? So he creates for 6 days, rests on the 7th day. That gives us the notion of a week. Great. That is really the only logical or historical source that we have for a 7-day week. But what is the deal with God resting? Did God really get tired? No.
Reflecting.
Good. Because to say that God, is exhausted after 6 days, God needs a weekend, right, is to apply human attributes to a divine deity, which doesn't make any sense. So the way we understand it, on every level, philosophically, allegorically, and also mystically, is that the rest, this notion of rest, is not so much God getting back his energy because it was depleted, but rather it's a different form of relating to the universe that he has created. And so to put it into human terms, again, not that we're creating God in our image, but just understanding this on some level within human terms, so there is the idea of a person investing their energy into something. And when you're investing your energy into something, if you're involved in a project, it's almost like your energy is in that thing. And when you stop doing it, what happens? You kind of reclaim your energy, right? It's restored to you. You get it back. And that's what happens on Shabbos, on a cosmic level. Throughout the first 6 days, or 6 days of creation, or 6 days of the week, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, God's energy is involved, invested in the world on its level, the way the Kabbalists explain, in other words, on a lower level. On Shabbat, the energy is pulled back up, which then lifts up on a spiritual state, not again on a physical state, because otherwise we would all get vertigo or whatever it was. Maybe that's the wrong word. It would feel like we're going in an elevator. But the energy of the worlds, of the universe itself, lifts up and elevates. It's called Aliyat Ha'olamot. The worlds are being elevated on Shabbat, on a cosmic, mystical level. Let's take a look in the words of the Alter Rebbe. This is from the Kutei Torah. The Alter Rebbe's insights on the Torah portions. This is what he writes about the energy of God during the 6 days of the week and Shabbat. Joy, 5a, please.
The words, "For on that day he rested," stated about God can be understood by comparing it to our own state of mind when we are at rest. When we are at work, our consciousness and thoughts are focused and integrated into the task at hand, but when we are at rest, they return back to their source. In a similar fashion, on the Shabbat, The divine energy that descended during the 6 days of creation into the 10 utterances by which the world was created ascends to its point of origin, meaning that everything returns back to its source.
I love that. I love that last line. Everything returns back to its source. Now, it doesn't mean that creation is undone. That's not what it means. It doesn't mean that, God created, now God pulls back, everything falls, everything disappears. That's not what it means. Everything is sustained and everything continues to exist, but it exists on a higher level. Almost like there's a way that the worlds exist not exactly, outside of God, in its sandbox, and then there's a way it exists within God. On Shabbat, everything is elevated to exist as it is, in a sense, within God, on a higher level, on an elevated level. So that's what he's saying, basically. Now, yeah.
But if you read the Hebrew, it's not an exact translation here.
Okay, yeah, tell me.
Because he says, the Alter Rebbe says, Lashon Shvita. So it's the language of stopping, not necessarily resting. And I know other places it says Vayanach Vayam Shvi. I get that.
Right.
Okay, but here, what to me he says it's a stop.
Cessation. Right. Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah. It's like, imagine you're investing. You're working. You're putting your energy into something, and then you're pulling back. Now, Joy, please continue text 5b. Here's how the Rebbe, our Rebbe, explains it and puts his own imprint on this idea.
The Shabbat transcends the process of creation and the continuum of time. Thus, though many weeks have passed since creation, we refer to Sunday in our prayers as the very first day and to Monday as the second day, etc. Because the Shabbat transcends time, the count after the Shabbat begins anew.
Let me explain what the Rebbe is saying. Thank you. Here's what the Rebbe is saying. Every week, we have a pattern that happens where God invests his energy into creation for 6 days, and on the 7th day, pulls it back up. So there's an investment for 6 days and a return, not a return of the investment, but a pulling back on Shabbat. It's kind of like the way the mystics explain what happens on Rosh Hashanah, which you've probably heard 1,000 times, right? Especially in Chabad synagogues, where every year God allocates a certain amount of energy for that year, and once the year is up, so that investment is done, and God reassesses on Rosh Hashanah whether or not he's going to re-energize the world, and then when we blow the shofar, God says, yes, I'll do it again, and God reinvests the energy back into the world. A similar thing happens every week on a weekly cycle. For 6 days, God's investing. On the 7th day, God pulls back the investment. Again, things are still running on a little bit of a lower level or a different level, or actually a higher level because things are elevated to him. But it's on a different level of relationship. And then after Shabbat, God once again reinvests in the world, which is why, the Rebbe says in text 5b, which is why when we sing or when we recite the song of the day, each and every day in our prayers, in the morning prayers, there's a song that's recited, a different song that's recited each day. We say Hayom Yom Rishon Shabbat. Today is the first day. Today is the second day. Today is the third day. What do you mean it's the first day, second day, third day? How many days has it been since the beginning? It's like, I don't know, many days. It's not day one. Yeah. Why is this day one? Because we start to count anew. Why do we start to count anew? It is day one. Because we started again from scratch. Why? Because it's a new investment. The previous week's investment was pulled back. Now, Saturday night, Sunday, whatever it is, we have a new investment after Shabbat, and that's what's going on. Now, why is this so? Why isn't it just that God should invest in the world and creation and let it go ongoing? Why does it need this cyclical, the 7-day cycle? It's in order to give us the gift of a new start. Because if everything was really one continuum, we couldn't really have a hard break. We couldn't really have a hard break and a new start. But because, objectively, the energy is only flowing for 6 days, and the 7th day it's pulled back, and the day that follows is not the 8th day, but it's a new day one. Because of that, Sunday constitutes, objectively, a new start. And because it's a new start, we can radically break from the past, and that itself is a gift. It's similar to what's said in Rosh Hashanah, same idea, that it's a new start, a new beginning, and we can do radically new things that we didn't do the year before, and we're not tethered or held back or limited by anything in the past or in past years. And it's also, frankly, what the Rebbe says about the notion of the human biology needing sleep. The Rebbe asks a famous question. Well, famous, I don't know. If you studied it, then it's famous, I guess. I don't know. The Rebbe asks a question, and that is, if God could do anything, which we believe God could do, so why did God create human beings with the need to sleep? It seems very inefficient. Right? If God created human beings to do important things on earth, he should have created the human being with a battery that keeps on going. Right? What was the Timex? It takes a licking, keeps on ticking. That's it. We should have the old Timex, the Energizer Bunny. It keeps going and going and going and going and going. Right? Remember these commercials?
You could work all day and study all night.
Work all day, study all night?
Yeah.
Party in between. By party, I mean do good things, do mitzvot, right? It's a mitzvah party. So what's the deal? The Rebbe asked the question, if God is creating human beings for a purpose, right? To make the world whatever it needs to be through Torah, mitzvot, and good deeds, etc. So then why create, as part of the human biology, the need to shut it down for 8 hours? That seems highly inefficient. So you'll tell me, no. What do you mean? In order for a person to have the energy, you have to sleep. That's only because that's how we're created. But imagine you're starting from scratch. You could create a robot. I don't know if you can. Why would I talk about robots? Who cares about robots? God could have created human beings in a way that we didn't have to sleep. The Rebbe says, why did God create human beings with the need to sleep? Not for any other reason other than to allow human beings to have a clean break between one day and the next. Because if it all rolled right into the next, you wouldn't know the difference, and you wouldn't feel like today is a new start. You wouldn't feel like the feeling of a new dawn, when you go to sleep and you shut everything down, and then you wake up and you regain consciousness in the morning. A person, not that we always do this, because sometimes we feel stuck. We do feel stuck, but that's a choice that we make. But we could choose to feel brand new. Yeah.
So it's the same concept, really, in a way, that you're describing about Rosh Hashanah, and the same concept of the Shabbat, and the concept of a week.
And a day.
Because what if you just kept rolling, and you were stuck in something, or you were persisting in a path that maybe wasn't so good, and that break somehow, you have a different perspective when you wake up the next day. You see a different way of doing something.
You can see it as a new start.
Better than you were the day before, or solving a problem with your child, or whatever.
Correct. And the choices that I made in the past, a day ago, but that's last week, right? Or a day ago and today's a new day. However, whether it's a year or a month for that matter, or a week or a day, these are all segments in time, important segments in time, in which we have the gift of a new start. But let's get back to a week, because that's really what we're focusing on. Which reminds me of that t-shirt that I once saw. I got paid weekly, very weekly. You ever see that t-shirt? Yeah. Classic. My favorite bumper sticker ever, not related to any of this discussion. Favorite bumper sticker. I don't know why this always got me. I may be slow, but I'm ahead of you. I love that bumper sticker, because it's so true. It's like you can't. They are literally ahead of you. There is nothing else that you can say other than, yeah, that just happened.
Down your car and actually do that, you probably get shot in a point.
I don't know. I would hope not. I would hope that people are not so trigger happy. But here's the deal. A week we've just explained according to the mystics. Why is it a thing? It doesn't seem to be, reflecting anything on a cosmic level. On an astronomical level, but it reflects a reality in the divine realm, and that is that God is investing 6 days. He's uplifting on the 7th, and after that, there's a new investment back into the nitty-gritty, into the details of the world. So what we have here is something phenomenal. We have here an idea as follows. We have 6 days that are mundane. The 7th day is uplifted, and after that, we're back to mundane, which means that Shabbat, as described by our sages and the mystics, and every type of genre of Torah, it's described the same way. Shabbat has a dual focus. Shabbat is the culmination of the previous 6 days, but also the inspiration to the next 6 days. Shabbat is a point in time that stands above the other points, that serves as the culmination, right? The pinnacle of the previous 6 days and the launching point for the next 6 days. Let's see how the Zohar, Kabbalah, refers to this element of Shabbat. Text number 6, David.
All earthly and heavenly blessings depend on the seventh day, for that is the day from which the 6 celestial days receive blessing, and each of these celestial days conducts blessing below on its respective day. Rabbi Yehuda said, "We must delight on this day and eat 3 meals on the Sabbath that fill the world with delight and satisfaction during this day."
You see what's going on here? The Zohar says that from this Shabbat fills the blessings for the next 6 days. We know how obviously it's a culmination of the previous 6 days and the elevation of everything that happened beforehand that we spoke about up until now. But what it also does is it provides the blessings for the subsequent 6 days. And what's the key to unlocking the blessings? Do you see what he just said? What Rabbi Yehuda just said? You got to eat. You got to eat meals. Eat 3 meals on Shabbat. We must delight, not just eat them. What's the language here? Ba la'asanga. Tainug. Delight and enjoyment. You have to delight in the Shabbat meals. 3 meals on Shabbat, and that fills the world with delight and positive energy and joy and satisfaction, and that precipitates the blessings of the rest of the week. And here we have something beautiful. The notion that this elevated space, this elevated dimension of Shabbat, unlocks the blessings for the rest of the week. Herein lies the problem. This is a beautiful thing, but there's also a problem inherent in this, and I'll tell you a funny anecdote to highlight this problem. I once heard, there's a custom, many have the custom after Havdalah, so you make Havdalah over the concluding ceremony for Shabbat. You say it over a cup of wine, and a candle, and some spices. So you smell the spices, you use the candle, you use its light, and you use it to see the reflection of the light in your fingernails. That's a way to officially get used to the light. The easiest.
See if you trim them before Shabbat.
Yeah, it's like, oof. And then you drink the wine. You say the blessing of the wine, you drink it, and then when you drink the wine, you pour a little bit out, and you extinguish the candle in that wine. And then many have the custom of taking their their pinkies, the fingertips, dipping it into the wine and putting it by their eyes. Some do. So people put it in different places,
Right.
but
In
some
their
have the custom
pockets.
of putting it in their pocket.
Right.
Why their pockets?
Money.
Yeah, it should be a blessing for material wealth, for parnasa, for a livelihood for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
So I once heard the following joke. Somebody told me, you know why it doesn't work? Like it never works. I put it in my pockets and nothing. I'm putting it in my Shabbos pants, my Shabbat pants, and I go to work with. I have my Shabbat suit I wear, but then my work clothes that I actually go to work the rest of the week. It's a different set of pants, so it's in the wrong pants. So I'm saying this anecdote to highlight the problem. See, Shabbat is so elevated that the blessings that are stirred up on Shabbat might be a little too abstract for the 6 mundane days that follow. And so you might evoke, elicit blessings on Shabbat, but those are super spiritual blessings because everything is uplifted. What does it have to do with the dough, right, that I need on Tuesday? What is Shabbat? It's like a spiritual energy. What does it have to do with the gelt that I need on a Wednesday, the next Wednesday? It's a little too abstract. Herein lies the power of the 4th meal. We talked about in the Zohar about the 3 meals. Here's the power of the 4th meal. What's the power of the 4th meal? The power of the 4th meal is text 9. We're skipping a few texts, don't worry. Text number 9. This is such a beautiful text from the Arizal, the great mystic, Rabbi Isaac Luria, who lived in the 1500s. Text 9. Chazan Ben, please take it away.
we partake of this meal on the night following the Sabbath to link the intensely spiritual aura of the Sabbath meals with this meal. And from this meal, all the meals of the coming week receive their blessing. One must rejoice with this meal as one rejoices with Sabbath meals, because this meal also contains the aura of the Shabbat.
See what's going on here? The Shabbat meals, as part of Shabbat, they're a little lofty. Now, that's a good thing on Shabbat, but as a link to the days that follow, to create blessings that are going to immediately translate into the stuff that we need in the following week, it's a little bit high. It's a little bit abstract, right? It's like a philosopher speaking to a child. It's going to go a little bit over their heads. So that's why the Arizal says, Rabbi Isaac Luria says, that's why we have a fourth meal on a spiritual level. What does it do? The fourth meal takes place after Shabbat. So on the one hand, it's no longer Shabbat, which means that the energy level has come back down. On the other hand, it's still special time. In the language of Jewish scholarship, you have two ideas on Shabbat. You have the Kedusha and the Bracha. You have the holiness of Shabbat and you have the blessing of Shabbat. So the holiness of Shabbat kind of ends with the Havdalah. It ends when you close it out. But the blessings of Shabbat continue through that night into Saturday night. And so therefore, if you have a meal after Havdalah, after you close out Shabbat, so on the one hand, it's still somehow blessed. On the other hand, as the Rebbe says, how do we know it's blessed? Because in the times of the desert, in the times of the ancient Israelites, when they gathered the manna and they gathered an extra portion on Friday, the second half that they didn't use on Friday, they used for Shabbat. When did they use it on Shabbat? They used it Shabbat meal 1. They used it Shabbat day meal, Shabbat late afternoon meal, and guess what? They used it for Saturday night meal, which means they had 3 meals on Shabbat. On Shabbat day, on Saturday. Are you with me on this? Yeah. The Rebbe says they gathered an extra portion of manna on Friday, and they used it for the 2 meals on Friday day and Shabbat Friday night. They used it for 3 meals on Saturday, Shabbat day, Shabbat evening, and Saturday night, which means that the Saturday night meal is linked to the holiness of Shabbat on some level. So on the one hand, it's no longer Shabbat. On the other hand, it's still not fully mundane either. It hasn't fallen all the way down. It's the perfect bridge to take the blessings and ease them down into the work week. So here's the bottom line. Bottom line is, when we eat the 3 meals on Shabbat, we're whipping up amazing blessing recipes. Amazing blessings for the coming week. But those blessings are still a little bit abstract. When we have the Saturday night meal, even if we eat just a little bit, we're taking that energy and bringing it down a little bit, until it's more accessible to us in the actual mundane week that follows. Make sense? I know these are mystical energy ideas, but the idea is we want to take it and step it down until it's accessible, until we can actually grab it, hold on to it, and utilize it. This is the power of the Saturday night meal. I need to mention one more thing. Yeah, makes sense? Yes? Perfect. One more point. The Saturday night meal is also called, you know what, let's read this inside. And please read text number 10.
During this meal, it is appropriate to proclaim, this is the meal of David, King Messiah. So there is this meal, the Saturday night meal is called Malava Malka. It's escorting the king, escorting the queen. And it's also called Su'udas David Malka Mashiach. It's the meal of David Malka Mashiach, King Mashiach, the Messianic king. Why? What does it do with King David? What's going on here? Like what's the connection? Okay, so there's a story. The story goes that King David found out by way of prophecy that he was going to pass away on a Shabbat. Every Saturday night, when Shabbat ended, and he was still alive, what did he do?
He had a celebration.
He celebrated because he's got another week, at least another week.
He's still here.
You with me on this?
No.
He had a tradition that he would pass away on Shabbat. So when Shabbat ended and he made Havdalah and he was still alive, thank God. And he celebrated with a meal Saturday night. So Malava Malka, that Saturday night meal that we've been talking about, became his happiest meal because it meant that he was going to live another week till the next Shabbat, which came with, I'm sure, some anxiety, as to be expected in that situation. So it's connected with David. What's the business of calling it David King Mashiach? Well, we know that Mashiach, our tradition says the Mashiach will come from the Davidic dynasty. But what are we saying when we proclaim this at the meal? This is again from the Arizal. So there is a beautiful text number 11a. We have to read this. One more text. I keep on saying one more text, but let's do this. Dan, 11a, please.
Our sages said there's a limb in the human body called the nascoid that does not benefit from any food that we eat, with the exception of the food eaten on the night following the Sabbath to accompany the Sabbath.
There's a bone in the body that does not gain any benefit, does not have any sort of reaction to anything else that we eat except for the food that we eat in this meal, the Saturday night meal. This bone that's called in this text the naskoi is also synonymous with another bone called the luz bone. The luz bone is famous in other texts for being the bone about which is said, text 11b, let's do one more text. Dan, please one more, text 11b.
When a person passes away, this bone does not decompose. Even if it is placed in a fire, it will not burn. In a meal, it will not be ground. Crushed with a sledgehammer, it will not crumble. From this bone, the body will be reconstituted at the time of the resurrection of the dead.
There's a tiny bone. That's what it says. The luz bone, also this naskoi, whatever. This bone, tiny bone, it says it's in the back of the neck, that cannot be destroyed on a physical level. Now, what does it mean, practically speaking? So I don't know what it means practically speaking, but I guess there's some sort of element of it that remains, no matter what. And it says that from this piece of the body, the fundamental Jewish belief in the resurrection of the dead, that's how it's going to be facilitated. The body will be rebuilt around this small bone, or a fragment of this small bone at least, that remains in perpetuity. Did I say that right? Yeah. Which means that not only is the soul eternal, but on some level, even the body is eternal. This is a weird thing to say, but it's kind of the implication of this, this is a normative Jewish belief, right? That not only are souls eternal, we typically think that souls are eternal, but bodies are temporal, right? Bodies are only here around, alive for a certain amount of time, and then they're gone, but the soul lives on forever, and that's kind of like our hope, the hope that we have in eternality and afterlife and all that stuff. But according to Judaism, mainstream Jewish thought, we have this other notion that even part of the body is eternal, not the whole body, in an animated form, and in what we would call a live form. No, certainly not. But a part of the body, at least, remains until such time that it will be reanimated with the soul once again. So on some level, the body is still around. This bone serves as the bridge between life 1 and Mashiach, the Messianic era, which is the resurrection of the dead, right? Life 2, so to speak. The adventure continues, right? So, the sequel. So this bone is the bridge between the previous state and the future state. Similar to the Saturday night meal, which is the bridge between Shabbat and the rest of the week. Because these two elements are bridges, therefore they have a connection to each other. So when we eat Saturday night, it actually nourishes that bone. The bridge meal of Saturday night nourishes and gives sustenance and energy to the bridge bone in our body. The bridge bone's connected to the hip bone. No. Right? The bridge bone, which is the luz bone or the naskoi, right? That is
connected to the bridge meal of Saturday night, and thus we have a beautiful idea. So the Saturday night, the luz, yeah.
So what is Naskoy?
It's
Luz?
also
the same?
the same. According to our understanding is that it's the same. We all have a lose bone. They call us losers. Losers. I'm here all week. I think I already said that. But now we know what it really means, because a week is like a whole thing.
That's where the expression lose me up.
Lose.
It's just a loose translation.
Oh, he said, why two names? It's a loose translation. Loose. I can't even take credit from it. Well done.
That's really good.
Well done. Okay, so what's the point? What's the point is that we have bridges in life. We have bridges in life, and bridges are helpful because it helps us get from one place to the other. Without the bridge, it would be too big of a gap. To go from Shabbat, from the elevation of Shabbat, to the regular week, it would be a big fall. Who knows that we would get there? So we have a Saturday night meal that's not Shabbat, but it's still kind of filled with the aura of Shabbat, kind of like the post-glow sort of situation. And that helps to take it down, to bridge it to the next week. And then we have the luz bone, which helps bridge our one life to the next life. And it's also an amazing thing. And so in the final analysis, the meal of Saturday night is so important on many levels. Number one, it helps escort the Shabbat queen. Number two, and why are we escorting the Shabbat queen after the Shabbat queen has left? Because it's really it's not about escorting it out, it's about escorting it into the rest of the week, which needs to happen not during Shabbat, but after Shabbat, as we explained on a mystical level. So number one, it's escorting the energy. Number two, it's acting as a bridge. Number three, it is connecting the blessings, which kind of is acting like a bridge. And number four, it is connected with this notion of rain. No, it's connected with the notion of afterlife and messianic or of resurrection and Mashiach. And this brings us to the final point, which is that the Saturday night meal is a good energy for the coming of Mashiach. And so I think a good resolution from tonight's class is that if we're already doing the Saturday night meal, let's do it even bigger and better. And if we're not yet doing it, let's jump in. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be a lot of food, but just no big deal, just a kidney, no big deal. Just a calf, just a calf and a kidney, size of an olive, some fruit, right? Some bread, some warm bread, warm up some bread, have some hot water. Go Talmudic, huh?
I can always manage the ears.
Yeah, there's always room. The Talmud says there's always room for dessert.
Sure.
No big deal, right? So something, we're supposed to eat something, light some candles, tell some stories, or read some stories. Make it special. It helps bring the energy of Shabbat into the week. It helps precipitate the coming of Mashiach, David Malka Mashiach, and it brings blessing to our lives. Let us do this and let us experience the blessings and the coming of Mashiach and good health and amazing things. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Rabbi,
Yes.
You didn't want to say that one, did you?
Which, the lion?
Rabbi,
No.
Rabbi,
Oh, the Arizal. Yeah. I was thinking it.
Karine and I flipped the coin.
Yeah.
We lost.
Oh, we're
She did a board membership.
got it. Well, listen. Now you can share with her what you learned.
I will.
All right, so folks, don't forget the practical resolution. Have a meal Saturday night. It's good. It's good. It's good for the heart, or something. It's good for the lose bone.
Yeah, I think that's amazing.